Ambassador Margaret Thompson stepped through the massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber, her black diplomatic uniform a stark contrast against the gleaming alien architecture. The Nexus station stretched endlessly around her, its crystalline walls pulsing with soft blue light. She had dreamed of this moment since childhood, humanity's first official meeting with the galaxy's ruling powers. But the reception was nothing like she had imagined. The chamber buzzed with alien conversations in dozens of languages, yet the moment she entered, silence fell like a heavy blanket. Hundreds of eyes, tentacles, and senses turned toward her with expressions she recognized universally: contempt. "Another primitive species seeks our attention," announced High Commander Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire. His four muscular arms gestured dismissively as his reptilian features twisted into what might have been a sneer. "Look at their representative, still using organic transportation. How backward." Margaret forced herself to remain calm as she approached the central platform. She had studied diplomatic protocols for years, learned 17 alien languages, and memorized the customs of 43 different species. Yet none of that preparation had readied her for the crushing weight of their collective disdain. The Vorthak representative floated above its crystalline seat, its mercury-like form shifting constantly. When it spoke, its voice echoed directly inside her mind. "We have analyzed their neural patterns during the approach. Limited cognitive capacity. Barely sentient by our standards." A chorus of clicks and whistles erupted from the insectoid Kithra delegation. Margaret's translator rendered their words with clinical precision. "Their technology relies on chemical combustion. Primitive beyond measure." "Honored delegates," Margaret began, her voice steady despite the hostility surrounding her. "Humanity comes seeking peaceful cooperation and mutual understanding. We offer our unique perspectives and dash." "Unique perspectives." Vextar's laughter boomed across the chamber. What could a species that has barely learned to leave their birth planet offer civilizations spanning thousands of worlds? The ethereal collective's representative, a being of pure energy contained within a force field, pulsed with what Margaret interpreted as amusement. "They still wage wars among their own kind. Fractured. Chaotic. Unsuitable for galactic society." Margaret felt heat rising in her cheeks but maintained her diplomatic composure. "We have overcome many of our internal conflicts. Our united government speaks for all of Earth." United government, the Vorthak mind voice dripped with mockery. "Formed mere decades ago after countless millennia of tribal warfare. We have been monitoring your species, human. You are violent, unpredictable, and technologically stunted." The council chamber's central hologram activated, displaying Earth's solar system. Red boundary markers appeared around it like a cage. By council decree, Vextar announced formally, the species known as humans are granted Class 7 status. They may inhabit their birth system but are forbidden from expansion beyond the heliopause of their star. Class 7? Margaret's voice cracked slightly. Her research had shown that only the most primitive species received such restrictions. Surely there has been some mistake. Our scientific achievements, our exploration capabilities dash. Your exploration capabilities. The Kithara delegates' mandibles clicked in what their culture considered laughter. You required 3 days to travel from your planet to this station. Our courier drones could complete the same journey in hours. Your largest vessels carry crews of hundreds, added the collective representative. Our automated mining ships dwarf your greatest achievements and require no living oversight. Margaret's heart sank as she realized the futility of her mission. Every argument she might make would sound pathetic compared to their accomplishments. The galaxy's great powers had already made their judgment. You may maintain a minor embassy here, Vextar continued, staffed by no more than 3 individuals. Your vessels are restricted to your home system. Any attempt to expand beyond these boundaries will result in immediate containment actions. The word containment sent chills down Margaret's spine. She had hoped for partnership, or at least respectful coexistence. Instead, humanity was being caged like dangerous animals. "We understand your concerns," she said carefully, "but perhaps if you could observe our progress over time dash." Time? The Vorthak's mental voice turned sharp. "Your species averages less than a century of life. We measure progress in millennia. You are barely more than mayflies to us." Margaret noticed something then, a subtle pattern in how they spoke. Each species emphasized different aspects of human inferiority. The Zephyrians focused on military weakness, the Vorthak on intellectual limitations, the Kithara on technological backwardness. It was almost as if they were trying to convince themselves as much as her. But she also noticed something else. In the far corner of the chamber, a lone figure in a human maintenance uniform worked quietly on a communications panel. Captain James Mitchell, according to her briefings, officially part of the station's technical staff, unofficially something much more important. Their eyes met briefly. He gave an almost imperceptible nod before returning to his work. Margaret felt a small spark of hope. Perhaps this humiliation served a greater purpose. "We accept the Council's decision," she said formally, though the words tasted bitter. "Humanity will respect the established boundaries." "Wise," Vextar replied. "Perhaps in a few thousand years, when you have matured as a species, we might reconsider your status." The other delegates were already turning away, dismissing her as irrelevant. Margaret bowed according to protocol and began the long walk back to the chamber's exit. Behind her, alien voices resumed their conversations, already forgetting humanity's existence. But Captain Mitchell continued his work, recording every word, every tactical display, every piece of alien technology visible in the Great Chamber. The galaxy had made a crucial error. They had underestimated humanity's greatest strength. They learned from their mistakes. 6 months had passed since the humiliating encounter at the Nexus station, and tensions between humanity and the Galactic Council had reached a breaking point. Human exploration vessels venturing beyond the inner solar system found themselves repeatedly blocked by Council enforcement patrols. Each confrontation ended the same way, human ships forced to retreat while alien vessels departed with mocking communications. War Marshal Keth Vor of the Hegemony faction stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the tactical display with growing irritation. The humans had attempted another expansion probe, this time toward the resource-rich asteroid fields near Jupiter. His patrol ships had turned them back easily, but the frequency of these incidents was becoming annoying. "They grow bolder," his tactical officer observed, his scaled hands dancing over the control panel. "This is the 7th incursion this month." "Desperate creatures," Kethvor replied, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered dozens of worlds. "They test our resolve like scavengers testing a predator's den. Perhaps it is time to remind them why they were caged." The Hegemony had always favored direct action over diplomacy. Unlike the other Council factions who preferred slow bureaucratic pressure, Kethvor believed in decisive demonstrations of power. The humans had been warned, yet they continued their pathetic attempts at expansion. "Marshal," his communications officer announced, "the Council has approved your demonstration request. You are authorized to deploy a full enforcement fleet." Kethvor's predatory smile revealed rows of sharp teeth. "Excellent. Prepare 200 vessels, enough to ensure these mammals understand their place permanently." Meanwhile, aboard the human vessel Horizon, Admiral Thomas Blake reviewed the intelligence reports from their latest probe mission. To any outside observer, his small fleet of 30 ships appeared to be humanity's entire space-capable military force. The illusion had been carefully maintained for months. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we're detecting massive fleet movements from the Hegemony sectors. Estimated 200 ships heading toward Earth." Blake nodded calmly, though inside he felt a familiar mix of anticipation and concern. The moment they had prepared for was finally arriving. "Signal all ships. Execute retreat pattern Alpha. Make it look panicked." His fleet began what appeared to be a disorganized withdrawal toward Earth. Ships broke formation seemingly at random, their communications filled with staged chatter about being overwhelmed and unprepared. To Hegemony senses, it looked exactly like what they expected, primitive humans fleeing in terror. But appearances could be deceiving. Deep beneath Luna's surface, Admiral Victoria Cross sat in a command center that officially did not exist. Banks of monitors showed readouts from across the solar system as automated systems came online. For decades, humanity had been building in secret, using the asteroid fields and outer planets as cover for construction projects the Council had never imagined. Her aide reported, "Hegemony fleet has entered the outer system. Admiral Blake is leading them toward the designated kill zone." Victoria studied the tactical displays showing both fleets, the pursuing aliens and the apparently fleeing humans. Red dots represented Kethvor's forces, confident in their overwhelming numbers. Blue dots showed Blake's small flotilla, appearing to retreat in disorder toward Pluto's orbit. What the display didn't show were the thousands of other human vessels lying dormant throughout the system. "Initiate awakening protocols," Victoria ordered quietly. "It's time the galaxy learned what humans do best." Across the solar system, things that had appeared to be asteroids began to move. What looked like mining platforms revealed themselves as military installations. Construction ships that had operated openly for months suddenly displayed weapon systems that rivaled anything in the hegemony arsenal. Captain James Mitchell, still maintaining his cover as a technical specialist aboard the Nexus station, watched his instruments carefully. The quantum communication array he had been repairing for weeks was actually recording everything: fleet movements, tactical discussions, weapon signatures. Every piece of data was being transmitted back to Earth in real time. The hegemony believes they faced 30 human vessels, he transmitted on an encrypted channel. They have no idea what's waiting for them. Aboard his flagship, Kethvor studied the pursuit with satisfaction. The human ships were scattered and uncoordinated, clearly outmatched by his disciplined formations. Their retreat toward the outer system was predictable, probably hoping to hide among the ice planets where his larger ships would have difficulty maneuvering. Maintain pursuit formation, he ordered. Do not let any escape. We will destroy enough of their fleet to break their spirit, then demand unconditional surrender. His tactical officer pointed to the display. Marshal, they appear to be regrouping near Pluto. Shall we move to intercept? Of course. These primitives probably think the distance will protect them. Kethvor's confidence was absolute. 200 advanced warships against 30 crude human vessels, the outcome was inevitable. What he didn't realize was that Admiral Blake wasn't retreating at all. He was leading the hegemony fleet exactly where humanity wanted them, far from any possible escape routes, surrounded by what appeared to be empty space but was actually the most heavily fortified region in the solar system. Victoria Cross watched the enemy fleet approach the kill zone and felt a grim satisfaction. The galaxy had dismissed humanity as primitive and weak. They had seen human technology and judged it inferior. They had observed human tactics and found them lacking. But they had missed humanity's greatest strength, the ability to learn from every encounter, adapt to any challenge, and prepare for any threat. While the Council had been congratulating themselves on containing the primitive mammals, those mammals had been studying, building, and planning. The trap was set. The prey had taken the bait. Now came the moment that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy forever. War Marshal Kethvor stood proudly on his command bridge as his fleet of 200 warships closed in on the fleeing human vessels near Pluto. The pathetic enemy force had scattered across the outer system like frightened animals, exactly as he had predicted. Their primitive ships moved clumsily through space, clearly outmatched by his superior technology and numbers. Target their engines first, he commanded his weapons officer. I want them disabled, not destroyed. They need to survive long enough to broadcast their surrender to the rest of their species. His tactical display showed the human ships clustering together in what appeared to be a desperate defensive formation. 30 small vessels against his mighty fleet, it would barely qualify as target practice. The hegemony's reputation for swift, brutal victories would be enhanced by this demonstration. Marshal, his sensor operator called out, I'm detecting some unusual readings from the surrounding space. Define unusual, Kethvor replied without taking his eyes off the main display. He was too focused on positioning his ships for maximum psychological impact to pay attention to minor sensor anomalies. Energy signatures that don't match the local environment. Almost like there are objects out there that our scanners aren't detecting properly. Kethvor waved dismissively. Sensor echoes from the ice planets. Focus on the enemy vessels. But then space itself seemed to come alive around them. The first human ship to reveal itself was massive, easily 3 times larger than anything in Kethvor's fleet. It simply appeared from behind what had looked like a dead asteroid, its hull gleaming with unfamiliar energy patterns. Weapon ports along its sides began charging with brilliant blue light. What is that thing? His tactical officer stammered. Before anyone could answer, more ships appeared. They rose from hidden positions within planetary rings, emerged from camouflaged bases carved into moons, and decloaked from behind chunks of space debris. Each vessel was larger and more heavily armed than anything the hegemony had encountered from humanity before. How many are there? Kethvor demanded, his voice rising with the first hint of panic. His sensor operator's hands trembled as he worked his controls. 200, 500. Marshal, the count keeps climbing. I'm reading over 1,000 vessels and still detecting more. Admiral Thomas Blake's voice cut through the hegemony communication channels with calm authority. War Marshal Kethvor, welcome to the true strength of humanity. You are now facing Battle Group Sol, 2,000 vessels and counting. Kethvor felt his blood turn cold. 2,000 ships? The humans were supposed to barely possess spaceflight capability. Their largest vessels should have been crude exploration craft, not these gleaming war machines that dwarfed his own flagship. Impossible, he whispered, but his tactical display told a different story. Red warning indicators flashed across his screens as human ships took positions around his fleet. They had been led into a perfect trap. "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "their vessels are mounting energy shields identical to Vorthak technology, but the power output is 30% higher than standard specifications. And those plasma cannons," added the tactical officer, "they match Zephyrian designs, but they've been modified somehow. The energy signatures are completely different." Blake's transmission continued. "For decades, while your council dismissed us as primitives, we studied every piece of technology you displayed so proudly. We reverse-engineered your weapons, improved your shield designs, and combined the best innovations from multiple species into something entirely new." Captain Emily Roberts, commanding the human battle cruiser Defiance, watched her tactical display with professional satisfaction. Her ship had been built in secret within a hollowed-out asteroid, using construction techniques learned from observing Kithra mining operations. But the weapon systems were pure human innovation, adaptive plasma cannons that could adjust their frequency to penetrate any known shield configuration. "All fighters, launch when ready," she commanded. From her ship's hangar bays came something the aliens had never seen before, swarms of small craft that moved like living creatures. Each fighter was controlled by advanced artificial intelligence that learned from every encounter, adapting tactics in real time. Commander William Parker led the first fighter squadron toward the hegemony formation. His pilots had trained for years in secret facilities hidden throughout the asteroid belt, studying alien combat footage and developing countermeasures for every known tactic. "Remember," he transmitted to his wing, "Zephyrian honor codes prevent them from targeting what they consider defenseless opponents. Use that against them." His fighters approached from angles the proud warrior race would never defend, striking at blind spots their cultural programming refused to acknowledge. Plasma bolts found gaps in their armor that had never been tested because no honorable enemy would attack from such positions. Meanwhile, the Vorthak vessels in Kethvor's fleet found their psychic coordination networks being jammed by something they had never encountered, human artificial intelligence systems that could predict and counter their telepathic commands faster than they could transmit them. War Marshal Kethvor realized with growing horror that his demonstration fleet had become the target of the demonstration. Every tactical advantage the hegemony possessed was being systematically neutralized by enemies who knew their weaknesses better than they knew them themselves. "How did they learn so much about our technology?" he demanded. His intelligence officer's response was barely a whisper. "Sir, remember the human maintenance workers on our stations? The technical specialists we allowed access to our systems? If they were gathering intelligence." The truth hit Kethvor like a physical blow. 4 months, human agents had been working throughout Council space, observing, recording, and learning. They had seen every weapon demonstration, studied every tactical manual, and analyzed every piece of technology the overconfident aliens had displayed. As human vessels closed in from all directions, Kethvor understood that this was not a battle between primitive and advanced civilizations. This was a carefully planned operation by an enemy that had spent decades preparing for this exact moment. The galaxy had underestimated humanity's greatest strength, their ability to learn from every mistake and turn it into an advantage. The battle erupted with devastating precision as human forces unleashed tactics the galaxy had never witnessed. War Marshal Kethvor watched in disbelief as his supposedly superior fleet was systematically dismantled by enemies who seemed to predict his every move. "Return fire," he commanded, but his weapons officer shook his head in confusion. "Sir, our targeting systems can't lock onto their fighters. They're moving in patterns that don't follow any known flight protocols." The human fighter swarms moved like flocks of birds, each small craft linked to the others through artificial intelligence networks. When hegemony weapons destroyed one fighter, the others instantly learned from the attack pattern and adjusted their movements to avoid similar strikes. The swarm became smarter with every passing second. Commander William Parker led his squadron through a gap in the enemy formation that his AI systems had identified. The Zephyrian battleship ahead of him was massive and heavily armored, but its cultural programming created blind spots that human computers had mapped precisely. "Target the honor sections," he transmitted to his pilots. "They won't defend areas they consider beneath their warrior code." Plasma bolts struck the Zephyrian vessel's lower hull where no proud warrior would expect an attack. The ship's shields, designed to protect against frontal assaults between equals, offered no defense against strikes from positions they considered dishonorable. Captain Emily Roberts aboard the Defiance coordinated the larger battle with cold efficiency. Her tactical display showed the hegemony fleet breaking apart as human forces exploited every weakness they had spent decades cataloging. Vorthak vessels are losing coordination, her communications officer reported. Their psychic networks are completely jammed. The ethereal Vorthak had always relied on telepathic connection between their ships, allowing them to fight as a unified mind. But human AI systems were flooding their mental frequencies with carefully crafted interference patterns, turning their greatest advantage into chaos. On the Hegemony flagship, Kethvor's telepathic advisor writhed in pain as foreign thoughts invaded his consciousness. "They're not just jamming us," he gasped. "They're feeding false information directly into our minds. I can't tell which orders are real." The human artificial intelligence had learned to mimic Vorthak thought patterns, sending contradictory commands that turned the alien ships against each other. Vessels that should have been coordinating their defenses instead fired on their own allies. Lieutenant David Clark, piloting his fighter through the battle zone, marveled at how perfectly their preparations were working. For years, he had trained against simulated alien vessels, studying their weaknesses until he could exploit them instinctively. "Kithera cruiser at 2 o'clock, he called to his wing. "Remember, their compound eyes create vision blind spots at 17-degree intervals." His fighter dove toward the insectoid vessel at precisely the angle its crew couldn't see. The Kithera had evolved on a world where threats came from specific directions, and their technology reflected those limitations. Human weapons found every gap in their perception. Aboard the human command vessel, Admiral Victoria Cross monitored the battle with grim satisfaction. Every alien species had evolutionary advantages that made them formidable, but those same advantages created predictable weaknesses that human adaptability could exploit. "Hegemony fleet cohesion dropping to 40%, her tactical officer reported. "Enemy vessels are attempting to retreat, but our positioning prevents escape." The retreat attempt was exactly what Victoria had expected. The human fleet had been positioned not just to attack, but to contain. Every exit route from the battle zone was blocked by ships that had been waiting in perfect ambush positions. War Marshal Kethvor realized with growing desperation that his fleet was trapped. Human vessels surrounded them on all sides, their weapons finding weak points with surgical precision. His supposedly invincible warships were being carved apart like practice targets. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of his tactical staff. "Their weapons are our own designs." "Not exactly, sir," his engineer replied, studying the damage patterns. "They've modified everything. The plasma cannons use our basic design, but they've added frequency modulators that adjust to penetrate our specific shield harmonics. It's like they built these weapons specifically to kill our ships." That was exactly what humanity had done. For decades, they had studied every council vessel that visited their system, analyzing shield frequencies, armor compositions, and defensive protocols. Every human weapon had been designed to exploit the specific vulnerabilities of specific alien technologies. Captain Sarah Williams, commanding the human destroyer Swift, watched her prey attempt to flee. The ethereal collective vessel was fast and maneuverable, but human computer models had predicted its evasion patterns months in advance. "Deploying tracking mines," she announced. The weapons were a human innovation, small devices that could learn a target's movement patterns and adjust their pursuit accordingly. Within minutes, the fleeing alien ship found itself surrounded by explosives that anticipated its every turn. Back on the Nexus station, Ambassador Margaret Thompson sat in the council chamber as emergency reports flooded in. The alien delegates who had dismissed humanity so casually now stared at the tactical displays in stunned silence. "This is impossible," the Vorthak representative's mental voice wavered with disbelief. "They were primitive. We observed their technology ourselves." Margaret allowed herself a small smile. "You observed what we wanted you to see. While you were congratulating yourselves on our inferiority, we were learning everything about your strengths and weaknesses." The battle reports continued streaming in. Human forces had not just defeated the Hegemony fleet, they had captured dozens of enemy vessels intact, their crews taken prisoner by boarding parties equipped with technology designed specifically to counter alien biology. High Commander Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire pounded his four fists on his viewing platform. "This changes nothing. One victory does not make them equals. One victory." Margaret's voice carried quiet authority. "Honored delegates, what you've witnessed today was our local defense force. Our main battle fleets are stationed in other systems, protecting colonies you never knew existed." The chamber erupted in panicked discussions as the full scope of humanity's deception became clear. The primitive species they had caged had not just broken free, they had been preparing for galactic war while pretending to be helpless. The aftermath of the Battle of Sol sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy that no amount of council censorship could contain. Within hours, Every major civilization had received detailed reports of humanity's devastating victory over the hegemony's demonstration fleet. What had begun as a routine punishment of primitive upstarts had become the most significant military upset in galactic history. Admiral Victoria Cross stood before the assembled Galactic Council via quantum transmission, her image projected into the great chamber where humanity had been dismissed just months earlier. Behind her, holographic displays showed the true scope of human preparation, massive shipyards hidden in the void between stars, manufacturing complexes that dwarfed anything the Council possessed, and research stations developing technologies that combined the best innovations from dozens of species. For 37 years, Victoria began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had orchestrated the greatest deception in galactic history. While your council debated our primitive nature, humanity was building an empire in the shadows. We studied every species, catalogued every technology, and learned from every mistake you made in underestimating us. The Vorthak representative's ethereal form flickered with agitation. This is impossible. Our intelligence networks would have detected such massive construction projects. Your intelligence networks detected exactly what we wanted them to see, Admiral Thomas Blake interjected, stepping into the transmission range. Every human worker in your facilities, every maintenance crew on your stations, every diplomatic aide in your embassies, they were gathering intelligence while you treated them as invisible servants. Captain James Mitchell materialized beside them, no longer disguised as a simple technician. I spent 8 months on this very station, recording your tactical discussions, copying your weapon specifications, and mapping your defensive protocols. Your security systems never even questioned the human with a toolkit. High Commander Vextar's forearms trembled with rage. Deception. Treachery. You have violated every principle of honorable contact. Honor? Victoria's laugh was cold and sharp. You caged us like animals, dismissed our attempts at diplomacy, and sent a fleet to destroy our orbital stations as a demonstration. We simply responded with the tools you gave us, knowledge of your weaknesses and the intelligence to exploit them. The holographic displays shifted to show human colonies scattered across dozens of star systems, each one built in secret while the Council believed humanity was confined to Earth. Mining operations on worlds the aliens had never explored, research facilities developing hybrid technologies, and defensive installations that made the Sol system look lightly defended. How many systems? The Kithra delegate clicked frantically. 237 colonies, Blake replied casually. Some established before we even made contact with your council. We've been expanding for decades while maintaining the illusion of confinement. The chamber erupted in panicked discussions as delegates realized the implications. If humanity had been deceiving them about their territorial extent, what else had they hidden? How many other species might be secretly developing technologies beyond council oversight? But not all reactions were hostile. The Eldari delegate, a graceful being of living light, stepped forward with what appeared to be genuine respect. Your species has demonstrated remarkable strategic thinking and technological innovation. The Eldari Confederation would welcome humanity as equals and seek mutually beneficial cooperation. As would the Peaceful Worlds Alliance, added another voice from the gallery. We have long believed the Council's expansion restrictions were unjust. Victoria nodded graciously. Humanity seeks cooperation with those who approach us as equals. We have no desire for conquest, but we will not accept subjugation. War Marshal Kethvor's image flickered onto the transmission from his captured flagship. Surrounded by human guards, the defeated hegemony commander looked haggard and broken. They knew everything about us. Every tactic, every weapon system, every cultural blind spot. It was like fighting an enemy that could read our thoughts. We could, Captain Emily Roberts interjected from her position aboard the Defiance. We spent decades analyzing your psychological profiles, your cultural restrictions, and your tactical doctrines. Every species has patterns of behavior that become predictable once you understand their underlying motivations. The ethereal collective's representative pulsed with what might have been fear. If you have studied us so thoroughly, what prevents you from conquering the galaxy? Your technological capabilities clearly exceed our own. Because conquest was never our goal, Victoria replied. Humans learn best when we have something to strive for. A conquered galaxy would become stagnant. We prefer the challenge of earning our place among equals. Margaret Thompson, still present in the chamber, stood to address her former tormentors directly. The Council made a fundamental error in judgment. You assumed that because our technology appeared primitive, our minds were equally limited. You forgot that intelligence and adaptability are not dependent on the age of one's civilization. The quantum transmission expanded to show human exploration fleets departing from hidden bases throughout known space. Sleek vessels that combined the best features of every major alien design, enhanced with uniquely human innovations in artificial intelligence and adaptive systems. These fleets carry no weapons of conquest, Victoria announced. They are explorers, scientists, and diplomats. But they are also protected by the full strength of human military technology. We will explore the galaxy as equals, not as subjects seeking permission. The Zephyrian delegation huddled in urgent discussion before Vextar spoke again. What assurance do we have that humanity will not use its technological advantages for aggressive expansion? The same assurance you gave us when you restricted us to one star system, Blake replied pointedly. None whatsoever. But unlike your council, we judge species by their actions rather than their potential for violence. As the transmission began to fade, Victoria delivered her final message. The galaxy has a choice. You can continue trying to maintain control through fear and restrictions, or you can embrace a new era of genuine cooperation between equals. Humanity has made its decision. We will take our place among the stars, whether you welcome us or not. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence as delegates contemplated the new galactic reality they now faced.